The night was unusually quiet in the small suburban town. Most people were asleep, and the streets were empty except for the occasional hum of a passing car. Dr. Amelia Green, a scientist who specialized in unusual biological phenomena, was working late in her home laboratory. Her attention was focused on a series of strange readings on her monitor, unexplained energy spikes coming from the nearby forest. She frowned, trying to make sense of the data. Nothing she had studied before resembled these readings. Suddenly, a bright light lit up the night sky, so intense that it illuminated her lab for a few seconds. Amelia rushed outside, shielding her eyes, and saw a streak of light crashing into the forest with a loud, thunderous sound. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her flashlight and ran toward the impact site, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. She had no idea what she might find, but deep down, she knew it could be something extraordinary. As she approached, the air grew warm and smelled slightly metallic. The trees around the area were broken and scorched from the impact. And then, lying among the debris, she saw her. The girl was unlike any human Amelia had ever seen. Her hair shimmered faintly in colors that changed as she moved. Her eyes were large and bright, reflecting a depth that seemed almost otherworldly. Her skin glowed softly, and her features were delicate, yet strange. She looked exhausted and frightened, her chest rising and falling rapidly as if she had been running or struggling for a long time. Amelia's first instinct was to help. She carefully knelt beside the girl, speaking softly, though she doubted the girl could understand her. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now. I'm here to help you." The girl's eyes widened, and she tried to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she made small, desperate gestures with her hands, reaching toward Amelia, almost pleading. Amelia realized that the girl needed something urgently, though she didn't know what it was. She gently lifted her and carried her back to her car, wrapping her in a blanket to keep her warm. Back at her lab, Amelia laid the girl on a soft bed she had prepared. The girl continued to make small, urgent movements, pointing at different instruments and devices in the room. Amelia tried to understand, observing her every gesture, every expression. She noticed that the girl's breathing was uneven and her eyes kept glancing at a corner of the room where she had stored various scientific tools. Amelia guessed that the girl might be asking for help with something, but she didn't know what. She decided to start with the basics: water and food. As Amelia brought a glass of water to the girl's lips, the girl's eyes lit up. She drank quickly, as if she had been extremely thirsty. Amelia noticed how fragile she looked, almost like she could be hurt by the slightest touch. She poured a small amount of nutrient paste into a dish, and the girl accepted it, eating with an eagerness that suggested she hadn't eaten properly in a long time. Amelia was fascinated. She had handled many rare species in her work, but nothing had ever reacted to food and care with such intensity. It was as if the girl was showing a deep, immediate trust that took months or years to develop in humans or animals. After a while, the girl's breathing slowed, and she lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Amelia sat nearby, observing her quietly. She wanted to communicate, to understand where the girl had come from and why she seemed so desperate. Amelia tried speaking slowly, repeating simple words and phrases, hoping to elicit some response. The girl watched her intently, occasionally nodding or shaking her head. Amelia realized that even though they didn't speak the same language, some understanding was beginning to form. The night passed slowly. Amelia took turns monitoring the girl's condition and taking notes. She was fascinated by every detail: the way the girl's hands moved, the way her eyes followed objects, the subtle changes in her expressions. She could see fear, curiosity, and an urgent need for something she couldn't yet provide. Amelia decided to call her Lyra. a name that seemed soft and fitting for someone so mysterious and fragile. "Lyra," she said gently, "you're safe here. I'll take care of you." Lyra's eyes widened at the sound of the name, and she gave a small, almost shy smile. It was a brief moment, but it gave Amelia hope that trust could be built, even in such unusual circumstances. By morning, Lyra had grown a little stronger. She moved around the room slowly, exploring cautiously. She pointed at objects, touched instruments, and sometimes just stared, her curiosity clearly insatiable. Amelia realized that Lyra's needs were not only physical, but also mental and emotional. She seemed to be craving knowledge, understanding, and perhaps companionship. Every movement, every gesture was a silent plea for more care, more attention, more guidance. Amelia felt a mix of awe and responsibility. She understood that this was not just a scientific opportunity, it was a moral duty to help a being who had arrived in this world exhausted, scared, and completely alone. As the sun rose, casting golden light across the lab, Amelia looked at Lyra and felt a deep sense of purpose. This encounter, which began as a mysterious crash in the forest, had turned into a life-changing moment. She had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing. Lyra needed help, and she would do everything in her power to provide it. Amelia couldn't yet understand the full extent of Lyra's origins or abilities, but she knew that the first step was simple yet profound, showing compassion, patience, and understanding. Lyra, still fragile and breathless from the journey that had brought her here, rested in Amelia's care. Her wide eyes watched the scientist with a mixture of curiosity and trust. Amelia watched back, determined to learn everything about this mysterious girl. She knew the road ahead would be long and full of surprises, but for the first time that night, she felt that the impossible was possible. Somewhere in this small suburban town, a bond had begun, a bond that would change both of their lives forever. Lyra awoke the next morning feeling a little stronger than the day before. The soft sunlight that spilled through the windows of Dr. Amelia Green's lab gave her a sense of warmth and safety she had not felt in a long time. She stretched carefully, testing her limbs, and noticed the strange but comforting smell of the lab, a mixture of chemicals, fresh air, and books. She blinked slowly, her large eyes observing everything in detail. Every object fascinated her, from the blinking monitors to the delicate glass vials lined on the shelves. Amelia entered the room quietly, holding a small tray with a simple breakfast. "Good morning, Lyra," she said gently. Lyra turned her head and gave a small nod, her expression curious. She reached for the tray with delicate hands, examining every item as if she had never seen food arranged like this before. She tried to speak again, forming sounds that Amelia couldn't understand, but the meaning was clear. Lyra was asking for help, for guidance, for more. It quickly became obvious that communication would be their biggest challenge. Lyra did not speak any human language, and her gestures were different from anything Amelia had seen before. She would point at objects, tilt her head, or blink rapidly in ways that seemed deliberate but confusing. Amelia realized she had to invent a system to understand Lyra. She began creating a set of symbols on paper, simple pictures representing food, water, rest, and other basic needs. She showed each symbol to Lyra, carefully watching her reactions. When Lyra pointed at the symbol for water, Amelia smiled, feeling a small sense of victory. This was the first step in bridging the vast gap between their worlds. As the day went on, Lyra's curiosity became more evident. She wandered slowly around the lab, touching instruments and observing how they worked. She pressed buttons gently, watching lights flash and machines whir. Amelia allowed her to explore while keeping a close eye on her, fascinated by the way. Lyra learned quickly. It was not just curiosity. It was a deep, insistent desire to understand, to know more about everything she encountered. Whenever she discovered something new, her small hands would move in little excited gestures, almost as if she were pleading for someone to explain it further. Amelia spent hours trying to teach Lyra simple human concepts. She would point to objects and say their names repeatedly, showing the corresponding symbol she had drawn. Lyra would watch carefully, occasionally repeating the sounds in her own unique voice. Some attempts failed, but many succeeded. Lyra's intelligence was remarkable. She absorbed knowledge quickly, understanding patterns and connections that took humans years to learn. Amelia began to see that Lyra's constant pleas for more were not just about food or water. They were about knowledge, connection, and understanding the world around her. But it was not just her mind that needed care. Lyra's body was different from a human's, and her energy seemed to burn faster than Amelia expected. She grew tired quickly and often collapsed on the soft bed, breathing heavily. Amelia noticed her fragile frame and realized that Lyra required more nourishment and rest than anyone she had ever known. She began preparing special meals, blending ingredients that might mimic the nutrients Lyra needed. Lyra ate eagerly, her small hands moving with delicate precision, yet her eyes always sought more. Not just more food, but more understanding, more guidance, more interaction. Despite the challenges, a bond was forming. Lyra began to recognize Amelia as a friend and protector. When Amelia entered the room, Lyra's eyes would light up and she would gesture for her to come closer. She sometimes reached out her hand, brushing lightly against Amelia's arm in a gentle way that expressed trust and need. Amelia felt a deep sense of responsibility and wonder. She had never encountered a being like Lyra, and she realized that patience and empathy would be essential to helping her adapt to this new world. The days passed, each one a careful blend of teaching, feeding, and observing. Amelia introduced small routines, feeding times, short walks in the lab, exercises to strengthen Lyra's limbs. Lyra learned quickly, often surprising Amelia by attempting tasks before she had been shown how. When she succeeded, her eyes would shine, and she would make little excited gestures as if asking, "Is this enough? Can I do more?" Amelia smiled at these moments, recognizing that Lyra's pleas for more were becoming a way to communicate her drive to learn and grow. However, not everything was easy. Lyra had moments of frustration. When she could not reach or understand something, she would make sharp, urgent gestures, sometimes pulling at Amelia's clothes or pointing repeatedly at objects. Amelia learned to respond with calm patience, guiding her gently and reassuringly. She also realized that Lyra's body needed time to adjust to human environments. The air, temperature, and even gravity seemed to tire her quickly. Amelia began modifying the lab environment, softening lights, controlling temperatures, and creating a safe space where Lyra could explore without risk. One afternoon, Amelia set up a small board with colorful symbols and pictures. She sat beside Lyra and pointed to each one, saying the words slowly. Lyra's eyes followed every movement, and she began to respond with her gestures, pointing at symbols and making sounds that seemed to match the meaning. Amelia's heart swelled with hope. It was the first time she felt that real communication was becoming possible. Lyra was no longer just a mysterious, breathless girl. She was a learner, a thinker, a being reaching out for connection. As evening approached, Lyra grew tired again, lying on the soft bed with her large eyes watching. "Amelia!" She reached out a small hand, pressing it gently on Amelia's arm, a silent signal for comfort and reassurance. Amelia held her hand, feeling the warmth and trust in the gesture. She realized that Lyra's journey was only beginning, and that each day would bring new challenges and discoveries. The bond between them was growing stronger, built on patience, care, and the shared desire to understand one another. By the time the sun set, Lyra had learned simple gestures for water, food, rest, and a few basic objects in the lab. Amelia felt a mix of relief and excitement. She knew that the path ahead would be long and demanding, but she was ready. Lyra's endless curiosity and her silent pleas for more had become a guiding force, pushing Amelia to think creatively, act patiently, and trust in the bond they were forming. Lyra curled up under a blanket, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lab lights. She seemed calmer now, but her gestures still hinted at an insatiable desire to learn, to understand, and to connect. Amelia watched her quietly, feeling both awe and responsibility. She knew that helping Lyra meant more than feeding her or keeping her safe. It meant nurturing her mind, guiding her growth, and teaching her the ways of this new world. And in that quiet lab with the night settling outside, Amelia understood something profound. The most important lessons were not only for Lyra, but for herself as well. Each day would bring more challenges, more questions, and more discoveries. And through it all, Lyra's constant silent plea of more would remind Amelia why she had chosen this path, to help a mysterious girl from another world find her place, and in doing so, to learn about courage, compassion, and the endless wonder of life itself. As days turned into weeks, Lyra began adjusting to life in Dr. Amelia Green's lab. But her needs grew increasingly complex. Her body, so different from a human's, required constant care. Amelia noticed that Lyra often became exhausted after even small activities, her breaths shallow and fast. She realized that she would need to monitor every aspect of Lyra's health, her nutrition, rest, and even environmental conditions, to keep her strong. Each day became a delicate balance between providing what Lyra needed and helping her explore the world safely. Lyra's curiosity never faded. She wanted to touch everything, to understand every machine, every book, every strange object in the lab. Amelia had to be creative to keep her both safe and stimulated. She set up small puzzles, experiments, and simple mechanical devices for Lyra to explore. Lyra approached them with her characteristic eagerness, trying to understand how they worked, her large eyes wide with concentration. When she succeeded in solving something, her body language was full of excitement, and she made a soft, high-pitched sound, a way of saying, "I want more." Amelia was fascinated and challenged at the same time. Lyra's body required special nutrients that human food could not fully provide. Amelia experimented with different formulas, blending ingredients carefully, making sure Lyra received enough energy to keep learning and exploring. Lyra ate with small, careful movements, sometimes stopping to gesture toward a machine or book, as if she wanted to understand that next. Her energy seemed endless when it came to learning, but her body reminded Amelia that she was still fragile. Outside the lab, the small town began to notice strange lights and sounds coming from Amelia's property. A few curious neighbors peeked through the fences, whispering rumors of unusual activity. Amelia realized she would need to protect Lyra from too much attention. Some humans reacted with fear at the unknown, while others were driven by curiosity. Amelia worried that if Lyra was exposed too soon, people might misunderstand her or even try to take her away. It became another challenge, balancing Lyra's growth and learning while keeping her safe from the outside world. Despite these challenges, Lyra's abilities continued to surprise Amelia. She seemed to understand patterns quickly, grasping simple mechanical and logical principles without instruction. Amelia introduced her to numbers, shapes, and colors, and Lyra would mimic them. Almost immediately, she was learning faster than any human child of her age, and sometimes Amelia wondered what other secrets Lyra's strange biology might hold. Every plea for more from Lyra was no longer just a request for physical needs. It was a call for knowledge, interaction, and guidance. Lyra also began showing emotional understanding. She noticed when Amelia was tired, speaking softly or offering a gentle gesture to show care. She responded to kindness with warmth, and sometimes her gaze seemed almost human, filled with gratitude and trust. Amelia realized that the bond they were forming was not only about care and survival, but also about companionship. Lyra needed someone to guide her in this unfamiliar world, and Amelia needed the joy of sharing her knowledge and experience with someone so extraordinary. But not every moment was smooth. Lyra could become frustrated easily when she could not understand something. She would make rapid, sharp gestures, pointing repeatedly at an object or device, as if demanding answers. Amelia learned to respond with patience, guiding her carefully and showing her how to try again. Sometimes they would spend hours on a single task until Lyra mastered it. Those moments were exhausting but rewarding, and Amelia began to see a pattern. Lyra's constant need for more was her way of showing determination and resilience. It was her method of learning, growing, and pushing herself forward. The lab itself began to change. Amelia added soft mats on the floor to protect Lyra during her experiments and adjusted lighting to prevent overstimulation. She also created small exercise routines to strengthen Lyra's fragile limbs, combining movement with learning. For example, she would hide colored objects around the room and ask Lyra to find them in a certain order, combining problem-solving with physical activity. Lyra's responses were fascinating. She moved quickly but carefully, using her hands and eyes in ways Amelia had never seen before. Each success was met with quiet excitement, her body trembling slightly as if the accomplishment had physical, as well as mental significance. Amelia also worked to help Lyra understand simple human concepts. She taught her basic greetings, emotions, and social gestures. Lyra imitated them with surprising accuracy, learning to smile, nod, or wave. Her gestures for more became more refined as well. Sometimes she pointed at books she wanted to read, sometimes at machines she wanted to explore, and sometimes at Amelia herself, indicating a desire for guidance or companionship. Amelia marveled at how quickly Lyra adapted, realizing that intelligence and emotional understanding were not limited by species. One day, Amelia introduced a mirror to the lab. Lyra stared at her reflection for a long time, tilting her head and moving her hands to match her own movements. She made soft sounds, observing herself carefully. Amelia watched quietly, realizing that Lyra was beginning to develop self-awareness, a crucial step in her adaptation to human society. Lyra's fascination with her reflection was another example of her endless curiosity and her desire to understand herself and the world around her. By the end of the week, Amelia noticed a subtle but profound change. Lyra had begun initiating, learning and exploration on her own. She would point to objects or books and wait expectantly for Amelia to respond. She seemed to be organizing her environment in her mind, thinking about what she wanted to explore next. Amelia understood that Lyra's pleas for more had evolved into a sophisticated method of communication and learning. She was no longer just a fragile, breathless girl. She was a student, an explorer, and a thinker, driven by insatiable curiosity and guided by trust. As night fell, Lyra lay quietly on the soft bed, exhausted but satisfied. She looked at Amelia with a calm expression, her eyes reflecting trust, understanding, and the quiet joy of learning. Amelia sat beside her, gently brushing a strand of shimmering hair from her face. She realized that the journey ahead would be full of challenges, some physical, some emotional, some social, but that Lyra's determination, intelligence, and desire for more made her capable of extraordinary growth. Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her role was not only to protect Lyra, but to guide her as she navigated this new and fascinating world. In the quiet of the lab, with machines humming softly and the night settling outside, Amelia reflected on the incredible progress Lyra had made. Every challenge, every moment of frustration, and every small success had built a bridge between two worlds. Lyra's insatiable desire for more knowledge, more understanding, more connection, was a reminder of the endless potential within her. And as she watched Lyra drift into a peaceful sleep, Amelia knew that the next stage of their journey would bring even greater discoveries, both about Lyra and the boundless possibilities of learning, trust, and human compassion. As time passed, Lyra's growth became more noticeable and remarkable. Her curiosity and energy were endless, and her intelligence continued to astonish Dr. Amelia Green. Lyra no longer needed constant guidance for every small task, but she still sought Amelia's presence for reassurance, instruction, and companionship. It was clear that her pleas for more were evolving. They were no longer just requests for food or comfort. They were requests for knowledge, interaction, and understanding of the world around her. Lyra wanted to explore everything, and Amelia realized she would need to find ways to nurture her mind while keeping her safe. One morning, Amelia set up a small series of challenges in the lab to test Lyra's understanding and learning ability. She placed objects in a sequence, some with colors, others with shapes, and asked Lyra to organize them according to her instructions. Lyra's large eyes scanned the items quickly, and with careful, precise movements, she arranged them perfectly. When she succeeded, her small body trembled slightly with excitement, and she made a sound that was almost a laugh. Amelia smiled, realizing that Lyra's sense of achievement was deep and emotional, not just intellectual. Lyra's understanding of human emotions became even more profound. She began noticing subtle expressions on Amelia's face. When she was tired, concerned, or happy, she would respond with gestures or sounds, showing empathy and a desire to comfort. Amelia was amazed at how quickly Lyra could interpret feelings that even many humans sometimes struggled to understand. This emotional intelligence made their bond even stronger. Amelia realized that Lyra's learning was not only about knowledge or survival, but about connection. She was beginning to understand the importance of relationships and trust in this new world. However, there were challenges as well. Lyra's body still demanded special care. She needed nutrients in precise amounts, exercise to strengthen her fragile muscles, and periods of rest to prevent exhaustion. Amelia devised a daily schedule, balancing learning, play, and rest. Lyra sometimes resisted the schedule, gesturing urgently for more activities or more exploration. Amelia learned to interpret these requests carefully, understanding that Lyra's need for stimulation was part of her nature. She adjusted the routines, allowing Lyra to pursue her curiosity while maintaining her health and safety. Amelia also introduced Lyra to the concept of storytelling and imagination. She would read aloud from simple books, showing pictures and describing events. Lyra listened intently, pointing at illustrations and making soft, questioning sounds. Sometimes she would try to imitate the actions of characters or rearrange objects in the room to act out a scene. It became clear that Lyra was not only absorbing information, but also forming ideas, making connections, and exploring creativity. Her mind was expanding rapidly, and Amelia marveled at how a being from another world could learn so quickly and adapt with such intelligence. Outside the lab, the small town remained unaware of the full extent of Lyra's abilities. Amelia worked carefully to maintain privacy, knowing that the world was not ready to understand or accept someone so extraordinary. She understood that exposure could bring fear, exploitation, or misunderstanding. Protecting Lyra was as important as teaching her. But inside the safe space of the lab, Lyra began showing signs of independence. She would initiate small experiments, explore new areas, or attempt to communicate ideas without prompting. Her pleas for more became sophisticated. She would point, gesture, and even attempt to combine symbols to convey complex requests. One afternoon, Amelia brought in a small telescope to show Lyra the stars. Lyra stared through it with wide eyes, her body trembling with awe and wonder. She made soft sounds, pointing at the sky and then back at Amelia, clearly asking questions about the vastness above. Amelia explained slowly, showing constellations and describing planets and moons. Lyra listened attentively, nodding and pointing in ways that showed comprehension and curiosity. She wanted to learn about everything beyond her immediate surroundings, and Amelia realized that her role was not just as a caregiver, but as a guide to the universe itself. Lyra also began forming her own routines. She would spend hours observing patterns, how light changed through the day, how objects moved when placed in different positions, and how small creatures behaved. Amelia noticed that Lyra was developing a keen scientific mind, combining observation, experimentation, and logical reasoning. Her gestures for more had become a way of expressing questions, seeking knowledge, and demonstrating her desire to understand deeply. It was a remarkable transformation from the frightened, exhausted girl who had arrived weeks earlier. Their bond grew even stronger. Lyra's trust in Amelia became complete, and she would sometimes seek comfort simply by holding her hand or sitting nearby. Amelia, in turn, felt a deep sense of fulfillment and responsibility. She knew that she was shaping not only Lyra's understanding of the human world, but also her experience of kindness, patience, and friendship. Each day was a learning journey for both of them, and each small success built confidence, understanding, and mutual respect. Amelia began to notice Lyra's subtle attempts at creativity and self-expression. She arranged objects in patterns, drew simple pictures with her fingers, and even tried to mimic some human gestures in unique ways. Amelia encouraged these attempts, realizing that allowing Lyra to express herself freely was crucial for her emotional and mental development. Lyra's pleas for more became a joyful exploration, requests for more knowledge, more experience, and more connection with the world and the people in it. By the end of the month, Lyra had grown stronger, smarter, and more confident. She could complete complex tasks, understand human gestures and expressions, and initiate her own learning experiments. Her relationship with Amelia had evolved into a true partnership, one based on trust, care, and mutual curiosity. Lyra's world was expanding beyond the lab, and Amelia knew that soon she would need to guide her into new environments, preparing her for challenges beyond what they had encountered so far. As night fell one evening, Lyra sat by the window, gazing at the stars once more. Her eyes reflected wonder, curiosity, and a quiet determination. Amelia sat beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Lyra made a small gesture, pointing at the stars, then at Amelia, then back again. Amelia smiled, understanding the unspoken request. She wanted more knowledge, more exploration, more guidance. It was the same plea she had made in the very beginning, but now it carried depth, intelligence, and self-awareness. Amelia knew that Lyra's journey was far from over. There would be challenges, discoveries, and moments of uncertainty. But she also knew that Lyra had grown into a being capable of learning, understanding, and connecting in ways that were extraordinary. Her constant desire for more understanding, more experience, more connection, was no longer a sign of weakness or need. It was a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and boundless curiosity. In that quiet lab, surrounded by books, instruments, and the soft glow of the evening sky, Amelia realized something profound. Lyra's presence had changed her too. She had learned patience, empathy, and the joy of seeing the world through fresh eyes. Together, they had built a world of learning, trust, and friendship, and the bond between them had become stronger than anything either had imagined. Lyra's pleas for more were now a guiding light, a reminder that growth, knowledge, and connection were endless, and that together they could explore them all. Lyra had grown stronger, smarter, and more confident than ever before. Months of careful guidance from Dr. Amelia Green had transformed her from a fragile, frightened girl into a curious, intelligent, and independent being. Yet, her thirst for knowledge and understanding remained insatiable. She still made small gestures, looked at Amelia with wide, questioning eyes, and seemed to silently ask for more learning, more exploration, and more connection. But now her pleas for more carried purpose and determination rather than desperation. Amelia realized that the next step in Lyra's journey was to help her experience the world beyond the lab. They began preparing small excursions outside the safety of their home. At first, these outings were simple, short walks around the property, observing the trees, the sky, and the animals. Lyra's eyes shone with wonder at every new detail. She reached out to touch the leaves, crouched to examine insects, and pointed excitedly at the clouds, making small, inquisitive sounds. Amelia explained each observation carefully, teaching her about seasons, plants, and the patterns of life on Earth. Lyra absorbed everything, nodding and repeating gestures, eager to understand more. One day, Amelia brought a small telescope and pointed it at the sky. She showed Lyra the moon and nearby planets, explaining their positions and movements. Lyra's excitement was palpable. She moved her small hands in sweeping gestures, pointing from the telescope to the sky and back, asking questions in her own silent language. Amelia answered patiently, describing stars, constellations, and the endless expanse beyond Earth. Lyra listened intently, her eyes wide with awe. It was clear that her curiosity knew no bounds. Her pleas for more had grown into a desire to understand the universe itself. Amelia also introduced Lyra to human culture, slowly and carefully. She showed her simple music, art, and storytelling, explaining the emotions behind each. Lyra watched a painting, tilting her head and tracing the colors with her fingers, trying to comprehend the feelings it represented. She listened to music, swaying slightly, absorbing the patterns of sound and rhythm. She even attempted to create her own marks on paper, arranging colors and shapes in unique ways. Amelia encouraged every attempt, recognizing that self-expression was a vital part of Lyra's growth. Her curiosity had expanded beyond science into art, imagination, and the understanding of human emotion. As Lyra's confidence grew, she began teaching Amelia things in return. She had a way of noticing patterns, understanding sequences, and solving problems that Amelia found remarkable. Sometimes Amelia would set a puzzle for Lyra, only for Lyra to discover a solution Amelia had not imagined. Lyra's perspective was fresh and insightful, and Amelia realized that learning was no longer one way. Together, they explored, experimented, and discovered in partnership. Lyra's pleas for more had become a dialogue of discovery, a shared journey of knowledge and understanding. Outside the lab, Amelia carefully introduced Lyra to a few trusted friends who shared her respect for science and curiosity. These encounters were slow and deliberate. Lyra observed, listened, and sometimes imitated gestures, learning about social interaction and human behavior. She quickly understood simple rules of conversation, the importance of eye contact, and the subtleties of tone and expression. Amelia watched with pride as Lyra began forming her own connections, using her intelligence and sensitivity to navigate these new experiences. Her pleas for more had evolved into requests for guidance in social learning, reflecting her growing independence. Despite her progress, Lyra remained humble and eager to learn. She still needed care and supervision, especially during physically demanding activities, but she was capable of initiative and problem-solving. Amelia noticed that Lyra's gestures had become more sophisticated, combining multiple signs to ask complex questions or propose ideas. Lyra could now express curiosity, concern, excitement, or even a hint of playfulness. Amelia found herself amazed by how a being so different from humans could develop such emotional and intellectual depth in a relatively short time. One evening, as the sun set, Lyra sat beside Amelia and pointed toward the horizon, then back at her, and then up at the sky. Amelia understood immediately. Lyra wanted to explore even further, to see new places, to learn more about the world outside. Amelia smiled, realizing that Lyra's journey was far from complete, but she had grown into someone ready to embrace new experiences. They began planning longer trips, gradually introducing Lyra to forests, rivers, and safe public spaces, allowing her to observe and interact with nature and humanity alike. Through all these experiences, their bond deepened. Lyra had learned to trust, to communicate, and to seek guidance when necessary. Amelia had learned patience, empathy, and the joy of witnessing growth in a being so extraordinary. They had become partners in exploration and discovery. Lyra's constant desire for more was now a symbol of her resilience, intelligence, and curiosity. Amelia realized that helping Lyra had taught her as much as Lyra had learned from her. By the end of this stage in Lyra's journey, she had achieved remarkable independence. She could navigate small environments, understand human social cues, learn new concepts rapidly, and express herself in a variety of ways. Yet her spirit of curiosity remained insatiable. Her gestures for more were no longer urgent. They were invitations, inviting Amelia to join her in discovering the wonders of the world. Together, they had transformed from teacher and student into companions and co-explorers, united by curiosity and trust. In the quiet of the lab one evening, Lyra looked at Amelia and made a small gesture, a hand over her chest, a nod, and a pointing motion toward the stars. Amelia understood without words. Lyra was expressing gratitude, curiosity, and determination all at once. She was ready to continue learning, to continue exploring, and to continue growing. Amelia held her hand gently, feeling the warmth and trust that had grown over months of care, patience, and shared discovery. She knew that no matter how far Lyra went or how much she learned, their bond would remain strong. Lyra's story had begun with fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty. But through patience, guidance, and mutual trust, she had transformed into a confident, intelligent, and emotionally aware being. Her desire for more had never been about weakness. It had been about growth, understanding, and connection. Now, she was ready to embrace the world fully, equipped with knowledge, curiosity, and the bond of trust she shared with Amelia. As the stars twinkled outside the lab window, Lyra and Amelia sat together in silence, reflecting on the journey they had shared. They had faced challenges, learned from each other, and grown in ways neither could have imagined at the start. Lyra's journey was far from over, but she was prepared for whatever came next. Her constant plea for more had become a celebration of life, curiosity, and endless possibilities. And together, Amelia and Lyra knew that the future held infinite adventures, discoveries, and the joy of learning side by side.